Which is it for you, Dr. Obadiah? Do you think the government is unwilling or unable to protect the people of Southern Kaduna?
In fact, it is not only unable, it is unwilling, and we have good reason to feel that they are part and parcel of the killers. Let me make some revelations to you.
That's a very big allegation, Dr. Obadiah. The government is part and parcel of the killers.
Yes.
That's big.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. How will the government just say, oh, it is revenge killing and so on? Then you leave it there. Oh, because it is revenge killing and so on and so forth. The body language of this administration, the body language of the state government shows clearly that they have a hand in the killings. No doubt about it. Because, you see, General Abacha, and people don't give him his due. Do you think you would have tolerated such nonsense? And let me make some revelations, because some of us also have our own intelligence networks.
Okay.
Have met with some of the bandits. We have met with some of their high commanders. One or two who have repented. They have sat down with us, not once, not twice. They told us that one of the northern governors is the commander of Boko Haram in Nigeria. Boko Haram and the bandits are one and the same thing. They have a sophisticated network. During this lockdown, their planes were moving up and down as though there was no lockdown. Moving ammunitions, moving logistics, moving money, and distributing them in different parts of the country. They're already in the south, in the rainforest of the south. They're everywhere. They told us that when they finish these rural killings, they will move to phase 2. The phase 2 is they will go into the urban cities, going from house to house, killing prominent people. I can tell you, this is the game plan. By 2022, they want to start a civil war in Nigeria.
On the condition of Nigeria, in which we pose the question, is Nigeria a failing state? In trying to answer the question, we will move in various dimensions, breaking down the topic and asking a variety of related questions. I'm very grateful to the audience. Thanks for joining us. If you are new, you're welcome. If you have been coming before, we are grateful. The next person we'll be interviewing is Mailafia Ashanti, and we'll be making the announcement shortly. I would like to thank our collaborators, various platforms, 7 of them will join us. This has been live streamed on 2 television stations. We thank Galaroye, we thank Africa Briefing, we thank organizations that live stream this, and we thank all of you. The guest for today is Dr. Obadiah Mailafia. Mailafia means a man of peace and is a very well-trained, very multidisciplinary scholar with knowledge and degrees in economics, political science, public administration, and international relations. He's worked in policies, chief economist, African Development Bank. He worked with the Central Bank of Nigeria. He worked in the the Chief of Cabinet, African Caribbean Pacific Group of States in Brussels. He's been able to coordinate so many international intergovernmental organizations, and he's been on the management of various institutions. He began his career in Oxford, and he went to teach. And one of the our guests who is interviewing him today, Ms. Bamidele, used to be his student when he was doing his National Youth Service years ago. Thank you, Dr. Obadiah Mailafia.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for having me
to this program. To start off this conversation is Ms. Bamidele Ademola Olateju, who is on the board of Premium Times, a weekly contributor. His commitment to the nation is very well known. She's written on a wide range of topics, from how to take care of the elderly, to the diaspora, to a variety of events in the country. She's a creative writer, an author, a farmer, digital strategist, trend analyst, and she's very versatile in the areas of technical communications. Thank you for joining us, Ms. Bamidele Ademola Olateju. Please pose your first question.
Thank you, Professor Falola, for the good job you are doing. I don't know where you get the energy to write, research, and do these high-profile interventions from. I wish you more strength and many more years of service, sir. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your platform, interviewing great guests for the second time. And thank you, Dr. Mailafia, for obliging us and for being a great inspiration and influence in my life. Now to the questions. First, why do you consider Nigeria a failing state? And while many people will characterize it as a failed state altogether.
Well, first of all, let me just say thank you very much to Professor Toyin Falola and the team. And without a doubt, Professor Falola is the Dean of African History and former president of the African Studies Association for North America. That's a very enormous achievement that you only associate with giants of world social science. So we salute you, sir, and long may you continue to do the great work that you're doing. And I have friends here. Bamidele, I think you were in Form 3 when I was teaching in Akoko Anglican Grammar School, Ikare, Arigidi, Akoko, not Ikare. And it sounds like yesterday, and you've done extremely well for yourself, you know. Well done, well done. You know, there's nothing that pleases a teacher more than to see the student bloom and flower like you have. And well done. I'm so proud of you. And I also have friends here, Professor Oke and you know, Dr. Lasisi, wonderful people. I'm very honored to be here, and I'm a bit intimidated by the people who have who have gone before me, preceded me in doing this conversation. So first of all, your question. Well, the thing is, that word, failed state, that phrase is not even agreed by all social scientists. You know, it is essentially seen by some as a Western invention, similar to what obtained in 19th century international law, the concept of the standard of civilization, that there were civilized and uncivilized people, and the civilized were entitled to conquer the uncivilized. And of course, they never really defined clearly what they meant by the standard of civilization. But it was a very profound, principle in the law of nations, right from the time of Hugo Grotius to Emery de Vatel and up to the early 20th century. Even the League of Nations, the concept of trusteeship was anchored on the idea that some cultures or nations were like children that needed to be, mothered into the standard of civilization. But there are certain agreed elements that, number one, there's a prolonged period of violence in which the state no longer enjoys monopoly of the use and deployment of legitimate force. This is the classic definition of the state as defined by the German sociologist and jurist Max Weber. So, and then you have collapsed institutions, a collapsed economy, and widespread poverty, and then violence here, terrorists here, insurgents there, in which the state apparently has lost control. And then another key factor is that the state is no longer able to deliver those public goods that are expected of a state. Protection of human rights, protection of civil liberties, the rule of law, administration of justice in a fair and effective and timely manner, in which the security agencies become a government within a government. We saw it clearly in the hush puppy saga, where an officer can constitute a law unto himself or herself. So these are all the elements of a failed state. I chose to use the phrase failing state, even though people like John Campbell, former American ambassador to Nigeria, and Robert Rothberg, a very distinguished political scientist, former president of Northwestern, they don't come any bigger than that, and a Harvard professor as well. They wrote an article in April in which they declared Nigeria and designated Nigeria as a completely failed state. There is still a residual nationalism in me, so I prefer to use the term failing state to be slightly optimistic, because at the end of the day, there is no algebraic formula to determine which state is completely failed and which state is not. The completely failed states at one point included Afghanistan, Somalia, South Sudan, Syria, Yemen, but unfortunately, Nigeria is quickly entering those league of failed states, and unfortunately. So really, this is where we are. And interestingly enough, there's an Oxford professor by the name of Oliveira who came up with the idea of successful failed states. That's another catchphrase. So you have fragile states, you have collapsed states, you have failed states, and then you have successful failed states. And some people will say like Nigeria is actually a successful failed state in the sense that the whole country is going down, literally, but you still have pockets of prosperity and competence. The international oil companies operate in Nigeria, they recruit the best, they're world class. Central Bank of Nigeria at the time was a center of excellence, regardless of the rest of the country. Things worked there. The work ethic was very strong. The patriotism was very strong. And I have friends in Lagos who are doing extremely well. They are living in a world of their own. They don't want to know what's happening in the rest of the country. They are living in Lekki, in luxury apartments. They are very comfortable. Around this time, they are in the boat club, and enjoying themselves. They cruise, with their friends, and then they have barbecues. They don't want to know what's the hoi polloi are doing, and they don't want, it's none of their business. But that is a little bit like the idiot of Plato, who doesn't see evil, wants to hear no evil, and he believes that everything is okay. But then, of course, nothing is really okay in Nigeria. At the trajectory we are going, it's going to be a massive implosion, God forbid. So this is why I think we are on the wrong trajectory, and we are failing in so many profound areas. And if care is not taken, we would become indeed a completely collapsed, failed state. And I say so because, well, for a state to completely fail, there are certain tests. You go to the airport, the airport is full of cows. No more planes landing. The place has been taken over by cows or anything, or goats, whatever. And then you check your bank card, and then there's absolutely no money because the banks are closed down. They are not opening at all. And there's no security everywhere. Everybody is running, everybody's hiding. Now, it is so easy for a country to transition from where we are now, where most Nigerians are despairing about the future. They don't know where tomorrow is taking us. And that is the most dangerous thing for a country of 210 million people to be, as it were, groping in the dark like a ship without compass, without a captain in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It can continue sailing for 100 years, but it will go absolutely nowhere. That's where we are.
Thank you. We are going to get very educated today. I would like to ask you, Dr. Mailafia, will Nigeria survive as one corporate entity, and does it even deserve to survive? What's your opinion?
Well, thank you, Bamidele. We have, I think, two questions here. Will Nigeria survive? I'm afraid at current trajectory, it's unlikely. My answer therefore would have to be no. Why do I say that? I'm not a prophet, even though Obadiah was a minor Old Testament prophet, quite a powerful one, I'm told. He was always prophesying nasty things against Edomites. But I'm not that kind of cynical. I'm not a prophet, and I'm not a very cynical person by nature. I tend to be optimistic. But I gave a lecture at the University of Ibadan 2 years ago. I gave a public lecture at the university. And I asked students to just imagine with me. It was a public lecture, Vice Chancellor, everybody was there. And I said, it was the title was Global Megatrends. It was the Sustainable Annual Development Lecture of the University of Ibadan. And I asked them, if you look at all the key trends that we have in this country, demographics, by the year 2050, our population is projected to be 410 million. Demographers tell us that our population doubles every 30 years. So in 1960, when we had independence, it was about 56 going to 57. 30 years later, 1990, our population was 100 million. 30 years ago. Now, by last year, another 30 years from 1990, our population is now 210 million. It was about 6 million last year, this year, 210 million. So add another 30 years, our population would double. So I asked the students, I said, look, let's just try systems modeling. If you were to put all these parameters into a system processing unit, wild demographics, collapsing institutions, diminishing social services and infrastructures. Even now, 50% of our people can't have access to electricity at all. And those who do have blackouts very frequently. And you look at that, lack of housing, collapsing education institutions, no adequate health facilities, infrastructures are decaying, and then grand corruption. Put all these things into your model and do some input-output analysis at current trajectories. And we are continuing at the same pace of low development, poor governance, weak infrastructures. And then on top of it, you have climate change, because the desert is encroaching at the rate of almost 10 kilometers per year. Almost the new map of Nigeria shows virtually all the northern countries have now become part of the Sahel. And in fact, in terms of Lake Chad, we are now minor owners, because the Lake Chad has shrunk to, our neighboring countries. They now have 2/3. We have only 1/3. Before, it was the opposite. So if we're to put all these things into some sort of input-output table, and with a government that doesn't have capacity, and leadership traditions that are corrupt, backward, and incompetent, what do you get? The system simply will collapse. Anybody will tell you that. So it's not me saying that Nigeria would collapse. By any scientific analysis, any serious analysis of trends and path dependence, Nigeria could not possibly survive. It would be a miracle. Now, do I want Nigeria to collapse? Of course not. I don't want Nigeria to collapse. I love Nigeria, I'm not going to lie to you. And but if we continue on the same path we are taking, we're treating, there's no doubt at all in my mind that this country cannot survive. God has been very gracious. We've reached critical junctures, and somehow by miracle, we managed to retreat. But you see, we cannot continue to tempt fate. Does Nigeria deserve to survive? Again, my answer is absolutely no. If you look at the things we've done in this country, the crimes against humanity, right from the 60s. My father was an evangelist, a missionary. I know how much my late father, bless his soul, how much they did to protect Igbo families. At the risk of they were going to kill all of us, kill them. And he had to, I remember to this day, that it was at midnight. I was just a kid, but I had never seen such fear in the hearts, in the faces of grown men and women. So it was at the thick of midnight that this whole family is not over a dozen of them, but to lead them into the bush paths, into the savannah. And we never heard of them again, because they were hunting Igbos like wild game, and killing them and slaughtering them and dashing their babies against railway tracks. We lost about 3 million people in the Civil War. Almost every year, in and out, there's one religious killing or ethnic cleansing here, and the bloodletting in this country is too much. Our African ancestors used to say that when you shed the blood of an innocent person, it is a curse on the land. And sooner or later, the curses will manifest. This land is filled with the blood of holy martyrs from all over the country. Muslims, Christians, Igbo, Yoruba, Middle Belt, everybody. We've all been victims in one way or the other. And with the crimes that have been committed in this country, the country doesn't deserve to survive, not at all. But we are believers, and there is such a thing as grace and redemption. Christian theology teaches that human beings don't deserve to be saved because we are sinful people, and yet somehow the Almighty decided to make an arrangement to accommodate our infirmities and to provide a path for grace and for redemption. And because there is grace and this possibility of redemption, my plea to, heaven is that please forgive Nigeria for her crimes and give us just another chance. So much as I believe we don't deserve to survive, I still believe that there's such a thing as grace and redemption. And we might have a chance unless we don't continue tempting fate, because we are reaching a point of no return. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I have 5 questions here. I hope you'll be able to, I will have the time to ask all of them because they are all important.
Yes.
I would like to ask you, why is the Naira falling so precipitously? And what can we do to bolster it?
Well, thank you again, Bamidele. You know that in 1960, long before you were born,
Yeah.
the Naira, the British, the Nigerian pound was £1 to about $61. Then up to 1970, it was like £1 to about 67, 68. That is cents, huh? 0.68. I don't mean naira, I mean dollars. 0. That is, it was, 0.68 cents, which was not up to our naira. Our pound was far stronger, almost double the dollar. And then when in 1973, as you know, there was a changeover from pound to naira. And even at that rate, we went back to about 61 to the dollar, 61 cents to the Nigerian naira. Chief Obafemi Awolowo was the one that was Minister of Finance at the time, and he was de facto number 2. And Gowon trusted him very, very much, and he gave him the leeway. He was an extraordinary manager of people and resources. And he even invented the name Naira for the currency. And so we had a very strong Naira. And even up to 75, the Naira was still very strong. It was about 69 or 67 cents to the Naira. The changing point came around 1985, when you had the military administration of General Babangida that came to power. He ushered in structural adjustment programs, which I think were very misguided. A lot of the Nigerian intelligentsia believed that. People like Professor Adebayo Adedeji, they wrote so much, so profusely about this issue. And I remember, in graduate school, if you quoted him, they will make sure you don't have your degree in Europe. Wow. They hated him so much. He was never invited to anything important. And yet this guy was an exceptional gentleman. He was a fantastic man, a great technocrat, a great intellectual. They humiliated him. And it turns out that he was 110% right. He argued that this thing was going to deindustrialize the country. It would take the country backward by 50 years. And, it's exactly what happened. And then, of course, they devalued the currency. And by 86, 87, Naira was 22 Naira to $1. Then during the Shagari period, further challenges eroded the value of the Naira. And of course, by the time of 2015, it was about 160 when Goodluck handed over. Today, Naira is over 500 Naira to the dollar. I wouldn't want to make predictions because it's not good karma. We are all scientists and intellectuals, but sometimes there are certain things, you just want to observe. I don't want to predict, to badmouth the Naira. But if we have pursued the wrong policies, it could get drastically worse. Why is that happening? Many things. High inflation, it's a tax on the poor. It undermines the value of your currency. And then the current account balance, if you have a current account deficit, that is to say, you are importing more than you are exporting. So there's a deficit in the balance of trade, in the current account balance. You may have to dip into your reserves. And economic actors watch this very closely, and they could decide at some point, look, these guys are just bluffing. They wouldn't have the money to finance all that. And of course, there's going to discount, the standing of the country. Fitch, Standard & Poor's, all the ratings agencies, that's their business. That's their bread and butter. Now, and then you have misguided policies. I don't like breathing down the neck of my colleagues in CBN. They are doing a tough job under sometimes difficult conditions. But you see, the truth of the matter is that the value of a currency is also dependent on whether or not people have faith, they have confidence in those who are managing the system. If they feel that these guys don't know what they're doing, it tends to affect the value seriously, because people are buying and selling currency and they will offload your currency. That's straightforward. Another element is also dollarization of the economy. There's a CBN directive that all invoicing must be done in Naira. That is the instruction, except the oil companies, because of the Kissinger. Oil is traded in dollars. But apart from that, but unfortunately, this thing is being observed only in the breach. If you go to highbrow real estate in Lekki and other places, the biggest landlords are invoicing Nigerians in dollars, not in Naira. And if you go to some of these top schools, the school fees are invoiced to Nigerian parents in dollars, not in Naira, which is a violation of standing regulation, but they still do it. And I'll tell you a secret. The big men in Nigeria, the top politicians, most of the time they don't even see Naira. It's only dollars they use. Oh yes, they practically don't use Naira. They use dollars. And because of EFCC and so on, most of the time, they don't even keep it in the banking system. They have other ways of storing it, So, and when the Naira falls, in fact, they're happy because they've accumulated huge fortunes in dollars. And, so that increases their purchasing power locally. So they have no vested interest in saving the Naira. That is a very sad aspect. So, and there's things like speculation, economic recession, the weakness of the currency, and then above all, even leadership. We really don't have a development strategy in this country. And we have what they call an economic team, but it's not really an economic team. And then the central bank, I believe, has been captured by vested interests, both in the political world and in the private sector, that the CBN has become a victim of political capture, and it is pandering to other interests rather than the common good. And then what is worse, they are even leaving their core mandate: price stability, the integrity of the currency, payment systems, management of external reserves, financial system stability, and the law, growth, employment. They are now becoming almost like a development agency. Nothing wrong with that if you know what you're doing. There is proper accountability for it. Sadly, there is no such thing. They've structured trillions, if not billions, trillions of Naira of so-called intervention funds. As far as I know, I've never seen a single document evaluating all these interventions. So we are in no position to know whether the remedy is not more costly than the disease, than the malady that they are seeking to cure. So really, that's where we are. When you look at all these things together with insecurity, geopolitical tension, rumors of war here, insecurity everywhere, and a lack of purpose, a lack of direction. People are getting scared, and I can tell you the biggest elites are already looking to move. For some of them have sent their families, they're just waiting with their bags and air tickets. In case they hear boom, they're on the next flight. Even Dangote, Africa's richest man, he announced not too long ago that he's going to shift 60% of his assets offshore to the United States. In fact, he has set up a building already, a tower block in Manhattan for that purpose. And his reason is that exchange risk has made it difficult for him to sustain the value of his assets. At one time it was even 25 billion. He's lost a lot of money. Today it's about 17 billion. So he's down to his last 17 billion. Poor chap. So all these factors, investors are asking, if you yourself don't have trust and confidence in your economy and you're running away, why should we as foreigners come in and invest? So these are some of the issues. And the best investments are coming in areas that have high capital intensive rather than labor intensive, like telecoms, oil, and the rest of it. So, Bamidele, this is really the story of the Naira, and there's no plan for the Naira. At one stage, you could in Liverpool Street in London, you could purchase electronics and other equipment actually using Naira. Our Muslim brothers tell us that in Saudi Arabia, in Mecca and Medina, you could actually use Naira to purchase goods. That is how strong the Naira was. But today, not even Benin Republic, they want to touch the Naira with a bashful. So how are the mighty fallen? This is really our situation currently.
Please,
wow. Thank you.
Let me give you the opportunity to ask your last question, please. Your last.
Oh. Okay, I have to choose. Wow. Thank you for the profound answers. Sir, you earned your MPhil from École Nationale d'Administration and DPhil, Doctor of Philosophy from Oriel College, University of Oxford, as a foreign and Commonwealth Office scholar. Well, President Charles de Gaulle, as you know, established École Nationale d'Administration in 1945 with the aim to rebuild a modern French state from the wreckage of the Second World War. Oxford and ENA are world-renowned for their intellectual rigor and meritocracy. I know we have problems with mediocrity in our country. Do we need an intervention like these top schools, a school for thinkers, and the meritocratic elite whose admission is only reserved for the top 100 in a given year? How can we take meritocracy serious in Nigeria and make it count?
Bon, merci beaucoup pour votre question. Thank you for your question. Yes, very interesting question. First of all, let me say that, we were not that bad. When I was, after leaving Youth Corps and going back to ABU briefly, I joined the National Institute for Strategic Studies. And Chief Simeon Adebo was the chairman of board. And each time he came, we youngsters were always struggling who will go and hold his bag for him, because we wanted the anointing to just rub off. Just carrying his bag. I wouldn't want somebody to even touch my hand again for some time. That is how much we revered him. And truly, these people were extraordinary. He was the head of service for the Western region. And then he became executive secretary of the UN Center for Institute for Training and Research, with the rank of Undersecretary General. Fantastic man, fantastic man. He was one of the greatest civil servants this country has ever produced. And there were people like Ali Akilu, Jerome Udoji, and even Ahmed Joda, who died just this week, who died last week. And even Mahmoud Atta, you know, when Gowon became head of state at the age of 31, Mahmoud Atta was head of service, secretary of government. So in his first press conference, Gowon stood with the secretary of government and was addressing the world press. He said, well, spoke about his policy, why they took power, and what they hope to do, to reassure the international community. And then he said, well, I have with me here my secretary. So Mahmoud Atta collected the phone from the head of state and corrected him, sir, I am not your secretary. I am the secretary to the federal government of Nigeria. Try doing that even in a democracy today. But that is how powerful there were people like Philip Asiodu. They were as best as anybody in the world. World class. In fact, one top economist, Wolfgang Stolper, he was among the architects of the first development plan of Nigeria. So he spent several years in Nigeria. He wrote in his autobiography, which was just published a few years ago, that the Nigerian civil service was one of the best in the whole of the Commonwealth. In fact, it could compete with Australia, Canada, and it was ahead of India, ahead of Singapore, ahead of Malaysia in terms of the standard of the civil service. This was also at a time when the royal family of Saudi Arabia used to go to UCH Ibadan for medical checkup, for medical treatment. So Nigeria, UCH was their Germany and their India today at that time, Saudi Arabia. So something went wrong. Today, you will notice that they say many of the permanent secretaries that passed the civil service exam for permanent secretary, most of them are former directors of finance. I know the reason. Allegedly, they are the only ones who could pay for the job. So people are now paying to get permanent secretary. It's God forbid. You could never have heard of that in those days. Well, de Gaulle at the end of World War II needed to reconstruct France. He needed to found a new country with a new ethos. And he realized that with all the noises that politicians make, all the promises they make, if they don't have a bureaucratic machinery that can deliver, it will not work. I mean, all these plans will come to nothing. So he created École Nationale d'Administration as a top league institution for the training of the technocratic elites of France. So, and I went to the international wing of which was called the Institut International d'Administration Publique, which has been merged with ENA. So Senghor, former president of France, was also a lecturer there, of course, of Senegal, long before my time. And Macron is an old student, and they normally send them for internships. I was sent to Canada to work at the French embassy. Macron was sent long after me. He was sent actually to the French embassy in Abuja. And weekend, we are told he used to fly to Kifela's shrine. Don't tell me what he was doing there, but hey, it didn't stop him becoming president of France. So it's a great institution, very rigorous, very professional, with very high standards. And they have one mission, la France, la gloire et le rayonnement de la France, which is the glory and the radiance of France. And they are so selfless, so committed, and it's tenured. In fact, you can go into politics, if you don't succeed, you come back to your job. Nobody can take it away from you. It's tenured like professors, because they are technical experts and they are very, very good at their job. So we can learn from them. We can pick what is useful in that model and apply it to Nigeria. I think, why not? So thank you so much for your questions. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The session has gone on well. Twice I felt like crying. The next person to interview you, sir, is Dr. Lasisi Olagunju. At the moment, is the editor, Saturday Tribune, very well known in the media world. We went to the same school, although I left before I got there. He went to Ife, where I made a first class Bachelor of Arts in English Studies. Then he went to my city, University of Ibadan there, where he collected both his master's and PhD in communication arts and political communication. He's won so many awards. And for between 2003 and 2008, he was special advisor media to the Osun State governor. So he's done both. He's done teaching, he's done policy, he's done media, and he's done public service. Please welcome Dr. Lasisi Olagunju. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. And good evening, everybody in the house.
Good evening.
Dr. Mailafia, good evening, sir.
Good evening. You are my boss, Lasisi. You know you are my editor. You are my chief, and I'm a columnist with Tribune. So he's my boss. And I should be asking you questions, Lasisi, not you asking me. But thank you. Heck, I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Your part of the country, the North, is in turmoil. Terrorism, kidnapping, banditry, murder. I mean, everything that will make a country bad is there. And amidst all these, there is the fear that the North is actually exporting all these bad things into other parts of the country. What, in your opinion, sir, would you say is the solution to this problem?
Well, Dr. Lasisi, you are very right. The North has been in crisis for more than 10 years, mainly arising from Boko Haram that started like a group of thugs. Then it is a known fact, it's not me saying that, some of the local political elites were hobnobbing with them. They were even paying them, they could hire them as thugs. And then Muhammad Yusuf was killed, unfortunately, in the hands of the police. The army had captured him and then released him to the police. And, eventually he died. And of course, that radicalized Boko Haram, and they became this global Frankenstein monster. And then the fall of Gaddafi, lots of weapons infiltrated downwards with adventurers, drug barons, drug cartels, literally creating air landing pads in the Sahara, carrying weapons, carrying drugs. And then these things have gone down south with now new groups like ISWAP and the rest of them. And, in 1999-2000, the North, starting with Zamfara, declared Sharia. And Obasanjo, President Olusegun Obasanjo, said that the whole thing would peter out, that this is political Sharia. And in fact, in a sense, it was political Sharia. He was right about naming the phenomenon, but he was not right that it would peter out. And the guy that started it, he doesn't even stay in his home state. He's always coming down to Abuja, to Jos, wherever there are parties, in Lagos, wherever there are, parties, he's there. He was a party guy. And then went away to Egypt to pay the family to marry was it a 14-year-old girl or something like that. So much for Sharia. But again, majority of Northerners with money don't stay in the north. They don't invest in the north. They move their money. Look at Dangote. Most of his businesses are in Middle Belt and in Lagos. So if you are serious about doing business, you don't stay in the north. I went to Maiduguri a few years ago. The former governor invited me to actually come and address his retreat of his entire cabinet. You know, and I was there for a week. And going to there, the plane was almost empty, but coming back, the plane was overfull. So it's always a one-way traffic. People are leaving. And so the North, you know, more than 10 million people out of school. They have about 7 million almajiri. These are young kids covered in dirt and flies with begging bowls all over the country. Sadly, the elites don't send their children to become almajiri. It is always the children of the poor. I lived in the Arab world. I lived in Tunisia, supervised projects in Egypt, Algeria, Mauritania. You know, you don't see almajiri. There are no almajiris anywhere. It is a Nigerian disease. And it is a weapon to be used by the elites whenever they need to kill people in their ritual bloodbath. It is this almajiris that they use. It's a mobile army. And so the North today is backward. And they have a very serious problem in places like Kano. Kano probably has the highest rate of divorce in the country. That's number one. Some of the highest levels of drug addiction among young people. And then they also have this problem of vesico-vaginal fistula affecting young women who are either raped or forced into early marriage, and their boils are completely condemned. And then, of course, their husbands throw them out and go and marry another one. It's a pity. If you visit the world in Kano, it is a humanitarian, it is an abuse of humanity. I'll put it that way. So the North today is very backward. The leaders refuse to face reality, and they think they can solve it by pulling the rest of the country down to their own level. For example, in WAEC and you know, the entry to NECO and all those jams, that the cutoff point for the North is totally different from if you are from Oyo or if you are from Anambra and so on. This is the most dangerous nonsense I've ever heard in my life, because every country needs a gold standard. Think of the French with their baccalaureate. In fact, the French, the former French minister of education in the 19th century, he boasted that he could look at his watch any day of the week, and he knows what is being taught in the classrooms of France. Whether abroad or not, the syllabus is the same, the standard is the same, and you can't change it. This is France. Or the German Abitur. The Abitur is the final, that one decides everything. There's no hanky-panky about it. Same thing with the, you know, United States SAT. You can't say the SAT cutoff point for Alabama should be far lower than that of California, because California is a richer state. What nonsense is that? When you are doing that, you are diluting the system. And in fact, you are even breaking the self-esteem of those young people. The best solution would have been say, okay, if we have this problem, let's create additional schools of training some of these young people and bringing them up to par with their counterparts in the rest of the country. That's the civilized way to do it. Unfortunately, that is not being done. And then you have today a government anchored on nepotism and exclusion. And unfortunately, today, the North is the poorest part of the country. The incidence poverty globally, on average, is about 45% nationally. But in the far north, Zamfara, Kebbi, Yobe, Maiduguri, it is almost like 80% of poor people, internationally destitute people, as internationally defined. So the North is in a complete mess. But they are the last to know, they are the last to accept that they have a problem. And you know, ignorance is very dangerous. Those who say that Western education is bad, they don't even know the history of Islam. Some of us can teach them Islam. Samarkand, Baghdad, Fez, they were the Oxford and Cambridge and Yale and Texas of the medieval world. They were far more ahead than Europe. Algebra was invented by a Muslim scholar called Al-Jabr. There were great scholars and scientists like Al-Farabi, Ibn Sina, and the rest of them. If you look, even when the Muslims settled in Spain, in Cordoba, in Alhambra, they brought even the knowledge of philosophy back to Europeans. They were in the Dark Ages. So how can you say Western education is haram? Do you know even what you are talking about? The Quran says, go even far beyond China to seek knowledge. And if it is true, Western education is bad, how come UAE, Dubai, they are trying to go to the moon? They are moving on, you know. So we have a peculiar disease in northern Nigeria, you know, perpetrated by elites that are very bankrupt, that are very jaundiced, and they hate Nigeria. They want nothing but the worst for our country. That is what I'm beginning to see, because with all these killings, they are not talking. And when you open your mouth small, they say, hey, 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 who told you to say that? Who told you to say that? What are you talking about? And they're killing, they're slaughtering people left, right, and center in their very eyes. It is the most wicked thing I can think of. And I don't know the purpose of education if you cannot call evil by its name. So, as you see, that's where we are. But I speak with compassion because the North is the most deprived part of the country. And we must always treat it with compassion. We must seek common ground and reason together about the best way to go forward. A new administration, if it comes to power in 2023, must look at the peculiar situation of the North and address it objectively and fairly. We need peace. We need to build a foundation of social harmony, reconcile grieving parties, send these children back to school, invest in teaching.